So I just want to talk about love for a little bit. I must admit it's been really funny getting emails, people saying, oh, thank you for being here. It's been nice to know you. And then trying to describe my preaching style. I didn't realize there were that many ways to say relaxed and confused. I have more adjectives now to describe the way I speak than I have ever had in my whole life. So thank you for that alone. It was fascinating. From ramblings to personal reminiscence, I got the whole thing. It was great. I really enjoyed it. So you're going to get the last one today of my rambling, personal reminiscent, carefree. I like carefree. I thought that was really good. That really addressed my style. So, one of the things I've always been interested in is trying to find modern day Jesus figures so that Jesus becomes more identifiable as a person instead of this kind of plaster sort of statue that we often subject Jesus to. And Bob Marley has always been one of my favorite Jesus figures. And for those of you who had children in the Bob Marley age, you probably don't like that association at all. Right? Because Bob Marley was also associated with, sort of hippiedom, smoking up a lot, wearing dreadlocks, so you probably have bad connotations of that. Or maybe you have good ones, I don't know. But Bob Marley is an interesting figure because he's a Rastafarian, which is a Jamaican brand, or sometimes people consider it a cult or a sect, of a Christian faith. And it dates itself all the way back to Ethiopia, to Zoroastrianism, which is the oldest monotheistic religion on the planet. And so when the slaves came from Ethiopia to Jamaica, they brought with them the Zoroastrianism, unknownst to their Christian captors. And it developed under Marley's folks into Rastafarianism, which is a deeply spiritual and peaceful religion. So there is a connection there as to why people would be connected to it, not just to smoke up. And in the religion, as in all religions, if you read Karen Armstrong's great tome on the foundation of the axial age, you realize every religion developed some kind of getting high as part of their religious ceremony at some point every year, except for the United Church. We even took wine and made it into grape juice. We are the least cool people in the world when it comes to religious ceremony. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But he would write things like this: live for yourself and you will live in vain, live for others and you will live again. Where does that come from? Right? It comes right out of the Christian story. Right? Die to self, live for others. Right? Lose yourself and you will find yourself. I mean, it comes right out of that. It's fascinating. So, you take this. When I first came here 5 years ago, I used to use this image often. This came out of a 1960s United Church stewardship campaign. And it was very radical at the time because it was the first time most Christian people had ever seen a laughing Jesus. The idea that Jesus was portrayed as someone who laughed, wasn't somber, wasn't straight-faced, wasn't lecturing or judging or criticizing. And I always thought that was such a wonderful depiction of the kind of Jesus I would have liked, because I would have identified with that Jesus. So when we come to the Gospel of John, John always has this image of Jesus as pointing to God. He doesn't have any expectation that Jesus is supposed to be worshipped. He said Jesus is just an agent. So he always said things like this: don't let your hearts be troubled. Always starts with that. Don't let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. So I always like that don't let your hearts be troubled thing, because that trouble has plagued me my whole ministry. From the time I started till every day, I'm always in trouble for something or other. So I found this little picture of the first church that I was a minister in. So this is in Scotts Bay, Nova Scotia. I was 19, and I was the summer minister. Some of you have heard this before. I was a long-haired, I could have been a Rastafarian. I wasn't, but I looked like one. And I got sent down at 19. There were kids in the youth group who were older than me. to be the minister in this church, which was a Baptist United Church Union. So one summer they sent a United Church student who taught everybody to dance and party and have fun, and then the next year they sent a Baptist student who told everybody not to play cards and not to dance. So they were very conflicted people. So I had grown up in a minister's household, so I knew basically the job, what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to preach on Sundays, supposed to run a youth group, and in the afternoons I was supposed to go visit. Right? Go door to door, visit everybody in the community. There were 65 households. I was there for 3 months. So I would get on my best denim shirt in the afternoon, and I would go down the community and visit. So one afternoon, I'd been there for a couple of months. I visited this very lovely older woman in her very beautiful clapboard wood house that looked over the bay. It was spectacular. And we had very nice tea and some kind of, I don't know, those diet cookies, I'm guessing, pretty well, on little trays in her living room overlooking the ocean, in the parlor, right? And the parlor was only used for the minister's visits and when somebody died, right? So they're just about equal, really, right? So I'm sitting trying to be on my best behavior on these dainty little chairs, and she's very quiet, and we're just making pleasant conversation. And she says to me, "Let me tell you about the ministers we've had." And so she starts telling me about all the ministers they've had, because this was a prominent church. It used to be a sea ship building before the steamships came along, like sailing ships were built there. So some of these old memories were quite pronounced, and there were some very wealthy people originally. So she started listing off Reverend Dr. So-and-so, and she said to me, "We had Reverend Dr. So-and-so, and when he was here, he was such a good preacher, and he was so smart, I couldn't understand a word he said." And then she said, and then, we had another minister who was here for quite a long time. He was a Baptist minister, and he was really smart as well. He could get you all stirred up, but I understood some of what he said. And then she went on this long list of ministers to the idea that their intelligence was ascribed with how little she could understand of what they said. And then, yeah, you know what's coming. And then she said, and you, Mr. Lynk, I understand every word you say. So that's how I started ministry out. So I learned this, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? People are not going to understand most of what you say anyway, or they're not going to listen, or they're going to tune it out. So at least you could do the favor of not speaking for too long, which I have tried to do. I hope it's been okay. And in the later years, what's been lovely is I have got to use pictures. Right? So you don't even have to listen to me anymore. You can just look at the pictures. Ministry has become better and better the longer I've been in it. So the other little thing I want to leave with you is another Bob Marley-ism. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's going to be all right. Right? How many of us have spent so many of our years worrying? Just worrying about everything. Our kids, our schools, our jobs, our homes, our cars, our trips, whatever. How many years have we wasted worrying about things? And now we're in the middle of this pandemic and we're supposed to worry all the time about it. How much time can we waste? Things will be okay. Things will be all right in the end. It's just another thing. But how much of our lives do we worry and waste when we can just suspend it a little bit? I think one of the great things about the Christian message is it will be fine. We need to be fine. It will be fine. Another little thing which I've always tried, look for beauty in everything. I mean, since we started showing pictures on the walls, how many beach pictures have I put up on the wall? Seriously, I'd have everything I said with a beach scene behind it, if I could get away with it, right? Look for beauty in everything. There's beauty all around us. I mean, I know you got sort of after a while when I got here. I used to tell you about my drive up here every Sunday. right? And you'd be like, we don't want to hear about your drive. And then after a year or so, you're like, how are the horses? Right? It's like I caught you. Right? Because there's beauty everywhere. There's a little pond that I drive up by in the summer. It's there. Nobody looks at it. But I know it's there because there are painted turtles that sun there. And on sunny mornings when I drive by, I play a game and count how many turtles are on. And I do that at speed. Right? Because there's beauty in that little pond. Right? It makes my drive better. Right? There's always beauty somewhere, all around us. And we miss it because we're like this. We're always so there. We're always so going somewhere that we miss all that beauty. Another simple one. Could be out of John's. Love God, love people, love yourself. Could have been right out of the gospel. And the nice thing about these things is you can flip them around. Could be love yourself first. Lots of people say that if you can't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you can't love God, you can't love people. You remember the Charles Schultz Peanuts characters, Linus used to always say, he said, I love humanity, it's people I don't like. Right? We always have these little caveats. I love everybody, but there are some people I really don't like, right? Love God, love people, love yourself. It's really hard to separate or tease out one of those because you miss all three then. It's all right, I'm getting to the close. This is one of my favorites. This is Eckhart Tolle, who's quite a great, well-founded theologian. Life isn't as serious as the mind makes it out to be. Right? And you know that because you know every time you take something too seriously, afterwards you realize you're ridiculous. You've made a great mistake, or a grand mistake. So, I have a little story for you. We go to the next slide. So, this is the church that I used to be at in Brantford. So that is the reconstruction. I was there for 14 years, and in year 10, when I was supposed to leave, it burnt down. The two are not connected. And the congregation said, well, you can't leave now, you have to stay until we rebuild. So we had an old Gothic church, very dark, all dark wood, couldn't see outside, dark windows, sat about 800 people. So I said, I will stay on a couple of conditions. One, that the church is built ground level, so you can walk right in off the street, not a step. Two, it has movable chairs in it and not pews, so that it can be used for all kinds of purposes. And three, it should have transparent windows in it. Because we're a community church, we feed people from the community, we have people on methadone who come into the church every day. I'd like us to look out on the world in which we serve. I'd like it to be a symbol for who we are. I said, those three things, if you'll go along with them, then I will stay. I was in a bit of a position of power. That would have taken 45 council meetings to get that through. It took me 3 minutes. Right? So that was the end product. It's pretty beautiful, isn't it? Right? It even had remote control blinds. You could just press a remote and they go, It was a very cool place. First day. First church service to dedicate the church. I'm all excited. I'm thinking, look at this place. We've got the architects here. We've got community people in. We've got the mayor. We've got the congregation. And I get up there to do my little preaching thing like this. And I'm talking about, look at these windows. This is symbolism. We're looking out on the world. We can see what's going on around us. And I'm ready to ramp it right up, to congratulate them. The church is paid for. It's open. It's ready for business. And as I'm just getting into it, somebody yells out, hey, somebody's breaking into my car. Shuts the whole service down. Shuts it right down. And Colleen and two other people go running out the front doors, and people go running out the back doors, and I'm like, oh, thanks. Thanks, God. That is really, really funny. Now imagine if I took myself really seriously. Here's my penultimate. This is my big moment. I've created this beautiful space. Look, and they're out chasing this guy down the street because he's breaking into their van in the parking lot. And he's probably one of the people we feed at our suppers too. It had to be synchronous. The whole thing had to work together. I have learned not to take yourself seriously. There is no point to it. So I'm going to close with this. I thought this was great. If you laugh a lot when you get older, your wrinkles will be in the right places. Thanks for always listening, folks.